Two people are recovering in hospital after an overnight fire at a low-rise apartment building downtown. Crews are still working to determine just what sparked the blaze. Good afternoon. The flames broke out in the early morning hours at a residence in the Annex near Bathurst and Bloor.
The fire has since been put out, but crews remain on scene to investigate. CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live with the latest. Beth.
Natalie, Michelle, two people have been rescued in this fire. Emergency responders say a man in his 70s and a woman in her 60s were taken into the care of paramedics. And as you mentioned, this fire broke out in the early morning hours around 3:15 at this low-rise apartment building on Barton Avenue. That's near Bathurst and Bloor. Crews say there was heavy smoke on the second floor, and a TTC shelter bus was called in to help keep the displaced warm. Two women in the building say there has been electrical problems with the wiring for some time. The office of the fire marshal is investigating and the cause has not been determined. Several people were affected by this fire. One man is dealing with water manage, others by the smell of the smoke. One resident tells us the people injured in the fire have two dogs. A group of residents are now caring for those dogs because they say this building is a strong community.
I heard fire, a lot of noise upstairs on the third. They had two dogs too, so the dogs were sort of freaking out. Then the alarm went off, fire department showed up, cleared the building, went up, blew it out, took the window out, smoke cleared. It's pretty quick.
Well, it's not great, is it? Because it's a beautiful apartment. They have a gorgeous apartment.
Relief that it hasn't been worse. Relief that no one is dead. It shouldn't have to come to that. We shouldn't have to be standing on a sidewalk in freezing weather being grateful that no one's dead.
This building was for sale earlier this year. I reached out to a real estate agent involved with that, and we are trying to reach the owner to get more information about the building and the conditions. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Now back to Michelle and Natalie.
Thank you, Beth. It's Jim Jessup's first day on the job as Toronto's new fire chief. As fire chief and general manager, Jessup will oversee all aspects of Toronto Fire, the largest fire service in Canada. He has nearly 30 years of firefighting experience and was promoted from deputy as well as acting fire chief during the pandemic.
Pickering City Council is moving all of its meetings online as the result of threats of violence.
For the past 2 years, the city of Pickering has witnessed a growing infiltration of alt-right individuals, ideologies, and influences that have created an atmosphere of uncertainty, fear, and intimidation over our council, our staff, our residents, and indeed the broader community.
A video from the city says threats have been delivered via social media, voicemail, and email. It highlighted the actions of Councillor Lisa Robinson, saying she is making, quote, baseless and increasingly erratic claims. The video also says Robinson held a town hall meeting at a community centre in November, and all city staff were barred from attending. Robinson called the mayor's comments and actions, quote, fear-mongering.
The province has officially approved plans to turn several supervised consumption sites in several communities into treatment hubs. The Ford government announcing last summer it was closing supervised consumption sites across the province, 5 of which are in Toronto. Those sites are within 200 meters of schools or daycares, and the province says they were posing a risk to public safety. Now they're being turned into, quote, homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs, which will be eligible for more funding as well as a one-time payment for transition costs. Critics say people who previously relied on being able to access a safe drug supply at those facilities will be at increased risk.
A man is injured following a stabbing near St. Clair and Dufferin. Police and paramedics were called to St. Clair and Glenholm Avenue around 1:10 this morning. The man in his 30s was found with stab wounds and was rushed to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. There is no word from police on suspects.
Meanwhile, police are investigating after a man in his 30s was stabbed in Corktown. Emergency crews were called to Front and Tannery Road around 3:30 this morning. Paramedics say the man's injuries are life-threatening.
Meantime, a victim is fighting for their life in hospital after a shooting in North York.
Officers responded to the sound of gunshots last night. CTV's Sean Leathong is live with the latest. What can you tell us, Sean?
Well, Michelle and Natalie, the house behind us is where the shooting took place just after 9 o'clock last night. And as you can see, the police are still holding the scene in the areas. The investigation is ongoing. According to Toronto police, the victim, after being shot, actually walked into hospital but remains in life-threatening condition. Last update I got from the police was just about 20 minutes ago. Now, throughout this area, family have been arriving today, obviously concerned for the victim themselves, and the neighbors have been very startled because they say the victim is someone who's lived here for a huge portion of their life. He said that their parents moved into a house in the area not so long, or when he was young, and he actually built the house that you're seeing behind us, and they don't understand why. I spoke to a neighbor about how startled he was a little while ago, but first I spoke to a different neighbor who says that his security camera actually caught what happened. Here's what he had to say.
Just him leaving his driveway and someone coming in from the shadows. That's pretty much it.
On foot?
Yeah, on foot. Didn't really see a car out here. Nothing suspicious.
So you like approach the driver's side?
They approached the driver's side window. You see a couple sparks go off, and he's ran away.
Well, I mean, it's close to home. I mean, we've known him ever since they moved in here. And, you know, we knew his dad, his mom, and his dogs, you know. And everything's been fairly quiet. I mean, on this end, you never thought that if anybody was going to have a problem like this, it would be him.
And Natalie, Michelle, I spoke to a family member who didn't want to appear on camera just a short time ago. He said that the victim, there was no update at this time, and they're obviously extremely concerned, as police say. And the last update was life-threatening condition, nothing beyond that. No word on suspects this time, and no word on any arrests. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. I'll send it back to you inside.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Still to come on CTV News, the FBI says the suspect in the New Orleans truck attack acted alone in, quote, an act of terrorism. We'll have the details coming up a little later in the newscast. But first, Environment Canada has issued several snow-related advisories for the areas to the northwest and east of the GTA. A winter weather travel advisory is in effect from areas from Kitchener and north through the Orangeville areas. Snow squall warnings are in place east of us from Cobourg to Belleville, north of Aurora through Aurelia and west of Barrie, through Lake Huron and down around the Kitchener-Waterloo area, with some areas expecting to get 15 to 60 centimeters of snow through tomorrow morning. The OPP says the snow has led to multiple collisions in the Halton region. Officers were kept busy in Oakville and Burlington, particularly on the QEW near Ford Drive and the 403. Let's bring in Sergeant Carrie Schmidt now from the Highway Safety Division to get a better sense of what is happening on the roads. Sergeant, let's start with the current conditions.
Well, the conditions right here are certainly not what they are downtown Toronto. We got these snow streamers coming through. I'm on Highway 11, just outside of Aurelia right now, and driving conditions are treacherous. Plows and salters are trying to keep up, and the snow is coming down in big flakes. Very limited visibility. Not a good day to be out on the roads. Many vehicles stuck or in fender benders with other vehicles, driving in conditions that they're not expecting. It goes from clear visibility to zero in a very short time. And so, this is what we're dealing with now, and it can pop up really anywhere across the region.
We know that these snow squalls can come and go so quickly. What is the best advice for drivers who are out on the roads when the conditions start to suddenly change?
Well, again, you usually can see the snow squalls ahead of you. It's like a wall of snow coming up, and you're going to go from bright sunny skies to a whiteout condition in a very short distance. So make sure your full headlighting system is on. Keep your hands on the wheel, your eyes on the road, your focus on driving, and give yourself lots of space behind traffic in front of you. If you're going up hills or around a bend, very often we get people losing traction, losing control. Sometimes you need to have a little bit of energy to get yourself moving and stay moving. Turn off your traction control if you find yourself stuck and you need to get your tires spinning a little bit to get yourself moving again. But again, sharing the road safely, responsibly with everyone is so vitally important. We're really just getting to the beginning of winter weather, and we better get used to this.
Okay, thank you very much for the update, OPP Sergeant Carrie Schmidt.
And on that note, we take a live look outside this hour, and you can see that, well, there's still some snow on the ground, but it doesn't look as bad here in the city. Light snow is falling in some areas this hour. For a closer look at the forecast, we're joined by Jessica Smith, who's taking in the afternoon air. Jess, tell us where you are and what you're seeing.
We're down here at the Bentway, down here in downtown Toronto, just off Fort York, and it's pretty nice. Now, we saw Carrie Schmidt, we saw that picture there, a lot of snow. We do have some flurries here in the city, but it's a great day to get out and go skating. Temperature-wise, although it is windy out there, we're still above seasonal, but we're keeping a close eye on all those snow squalls that are kind of making their way through. So just take your time if you're out on the roads. Now, temperature-wise, as we kind of step into a brand new year here, we're actually starting to feel pretty close to seasonal. So keep that in mind. It is going to be a little bit messy out there. Now, taking a look at our weather boards, we are going to see again that snow starting to make its way across. We're looking at those snow squalls as we head in towards our afternoon. So again, keep that in mind. We are looking at a number of winter weather travel advisories, snow squall warnings, and watches in place. You saw Carrie Smith there. There's a ton of snow. Please be careful. Now, as you make your way out and about the rest of the afternoon, at least temperature-wise, we're still holding on at a fairly seasonal point. So the winds are going to stay gusty out of the west right throughout the day. So keep that in the back of your mind. But temperature-wise, right now, it's not too shabby. All things considered, we are into the first few days of 2025, and we're holding on at the freezing mark through the islands, -1 through Pearson, and a bit of a wind chill. But into this afternoon, we're holding on above seasonal. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast. We're going to do some figure eights with our skates. Cameraman Pat Dara, shout out to him who's skating backwards right now, but I'll send it back inside to the studio.
We are so impressed. It looks fabulous. Have fun, Jess. We'll see you soon. Now to some other news. The FBI says it believes the man who drove his truck into a crowd of New Year's revelers in New Orleans acted alone. 15 people were killed, about 30 others were injured in the early morning hours of January 1st. Authorities had been focusing on whether Shamsuddin Jabbar had help in planning the attack. Weapons, a potential explosive device, and an ISIS flag were found in the vehicle. But today, officials said they do not think there were any accomplices in this case. They called the act an act of terrorism and said Jabbar was inspired by Islamic State. The New Orleans mayor said Bourbon Street will reopen before this afternoon's rescheduled Sugar Bowl College football game. And the FBI also said today there is no link between the New Orleans attack and a separate incident in Las Vegas yesterday. A Tesla Cybertruck exploded in flames outside the Trump International Hotel. The vehicle was packed with firework, mortars, and camp fuel canisters. 7 people suffered minor injuries. The sole occupant of the truck did not survive. For more on this, we're joined by CTV public safety analyst Chris Lewis. Great to have you with us. Unfortunately, we're talking about some really frightening incidents. While separate, they are very horrific. What do you make of this?
You know, it's a sign of the awful times that we ultimately live in across the world. That these things are going to happen. They happen with more frequency than they should, but we've been very fortunate that they don't happen more often. We've had very few attacks like this in Canada, and it's really a case of radicalization and mental health issues. This guy was going to kill his family, decided to kill a whole pile of people, planned it, carried it out on his own. Frightening stuff, but it is the reality of the world, sadly. But we can't let that change who we are, how we function in society. And it is what it is.
That's an important message because it can feel overwhelming. You're excited to start a new year, and then you see these images, revelers in that very popular street. One can only imagine those who did survive what they will live with for the rest of their lives. Sure. With regards to New Orleans, I mean, this was a U.S. Army veteran who was ultimately shot by police. He was a citizen of Texas, 100%, according to authorities, inspired by the Islamic State. It makes you wonder how this happens.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have some mental health issues of some sort to lock onto some radical beliefs like that, and then ultimately make the decision to kill a whole pile of people, and ultimately yourself in the process. I mean, it's hard for us to think like that or imagine how that happens. But the mind is an amazing thing, and some people are caught up in this, obviously. Very lucky that more people weren't hurt. Why did he do it at 3 a.m. and not midnight when there was people everywhere? Why did he decide to do it that way? We'll never know unless they find more stuff in his writings and any online postings.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the incident outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas with that Cybertruck, I think it's interesting. And while these two cases are separate, according to authorities, it's been discovered that that there was an active duty U.S. Army soldier involved in that situation.
Yeah, for sure, and no linkages at all, just coincidences that ultimately they're both Army personnel and that they both rented vehicles from the same place. But this was way different. No hints of radicalization whatsoever so far. He just killed himself, didn't hurt anyone else. A lot of that may be just more good luck than good management, given that Tesla truck is not pretty in any way, shape, or form, in my view. But boy, it's sure strong because it really prevented a lot of deaths. But he died. I mean, to make the decision to do all of that, ultimately kill yourself, there's severe mental health issues involved there.
And when we look at these incidents, you wonder, what can you do to prevent this? I mean, if these are folks who were involved in the military, is there more they should be doing?
Is it the military or is it just individuals, and do family members and friends know something's up but don't take any action? We always hear after, now I know what he meant when he said X or Y. People are afraid to report their friends and loved ones, but ultimately it may be their life that is saved, in addition to a pile of other lives being jeopardized or lost. In this case, if somebody knew something and didn't say something, it's too late now because the whole pile of people are dead in New Orleans. And so that's something we all have to carry with us, is that reminder that we need to speak up and save lives.
Before we let you go, I know your glass half full. I know there are people who are maybe watching these news stories and being frightened, thinking, is it safe to go to the U.S.? How do you look at the situation?
You know what? The U.S. certainly has more crime than we do in Canada. We're very fortunate. I'm in the U.S. right now, and they don't bat an eyelash in terms of going anywhere or doing anything. I'm an unarmed Canadian down here. So we can't change the way we live our lives, because bad things will happen whether you're walking across a crosswalk or whatever. Lightning can strike at a soccer game and kill innocent people. So how do we just prevent that? Lock ourselves in our houses? That's not going to accomplish anything. So we just need to live our lives and just try our best to remain safe.
Being in news, don't we know it? CTV's public safety analyst, Chris Lewis, thanks for being with us. And I hope you are on vacation. You can enjoy some time.
I am. Thank you, and Happy New Year, Michelle.
Take care.
In the Gaza Strip, officials say Israeli airstrikes killed at least 18 people today. Palestinians inspected damage at an airstrike, at a tent camp hit by an airstrike that was sheltering displaced families in Khan Yunis. There was no immediate comment from the Israeli military on the attacks. More than 45,500 Palestinians have been killed in the war in Gaza, according to health officials. It began after a Hamas attack on Israel, in which 1,200 people were killed and another 251 were taken hostage.
Investigators have pulled the data off the cockpit voice recorder from the jet that crashed in South Korea.
They hope it will shed light on what forced the plane to crash land, killing 179 people. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth reports.
It's a disaster still sending shockwaves around the globe. On Sunday at Muwon International Airport in South Korea, the Jeju Air Boeing 737-800, arriving from Bangkok, skidded down the runway at high speed before crashing into a wall and bursting into flames. Moments before the crash, the pilot issued a mayday call and reported a bird strike. The video also shows the landing gear was not deployed. Families of the 175 passengers and 4 crew members who died have visited the crash site. There were 2 survivors. Korean authorities say they have identified all 179 bodies. 2 from Thailand, the rest were South Korean.
He's doing a great job here. Everything's fine.
After studying video of the flight, CTV News aviation specialist Phil Dirty is at a loss to explain what caused the crash.
There's so many questions that are yet to be answered.
South Korean officials say they can't extract the contents of the damaged black box, so they're sending it to the U.S. for further analysis. Dirty says this is the first step in what will be a thorough and lengthy investigation. investigation.
But we have to wait till we get the cockpit voice recorders and flight data recorder.
Investigators from South Korea and the U.S., along with Boeing representatives, are involved in the joint investigation. In an email, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board told CTV News any findings from the damaged flight recorder will be released by South Korean aviation officials. Dirty has questions about the 4-meter-high walled embankment at the end of the runway.
Which was the mounting spot for the instrument landing system. It goes against the international aviation standards to have a wall at the end of the runway.
Dirty says if the wall had not been there, it's possible this tragedy could have been avoided. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
A few changes are coming in 2025 that could affect Canadians' finances.
While consumers are enjoying a temporary GST break, other tax increases will be setting in. CTV's Alison Bamford has more.
Coming off a busy and expensive holiday season, many Canadians are looking for relief.
I have to put more effort into my budgeting and worry about, the necessities a bit more.
I've had a multitude of jobs where minimum wage just isn't enough.
The quickest relief is likely to come January 15th from the Canada Carbon Rebate, but only to people who live in provinces that follow Ottawa's carbon pricing system. The quarterly rebates are meant to offset the carbon tax, which goes up another $15 per ton on April 1st. For drivers, that means another 3 cents per liter of gas will be tacked on to the fuel charge at the pumps.
Instead of the carbon tax costing about $11 to fill up a minivan, it's going to cost about $14 to fill up a minivan. So that's an extra $3 every time you fill up your minivan. So that's going to be felt right away.
There are also the usual changes to tax brackets to prevent Canadians from paying higher taxes simply due to inflation. Others will see a little more shaved off their paycheck from rising CPP contributions.
There are some Canadians, definitely at the lower end of the income spectrum, who will see actually a slight decrease in payroll taxes, but the majority of Canadians are going to see higher payroll taxes.
In the end, experts say affordability challenges are likely to stick around this year.
As Canadians look to fill that first grocery bag of the year, they're going to find that it's not any easier than it was this time last year. And in many ways, it's going to be harder as well.
The temporary GST break could offer relief to some Canadians, but the tax holiday only lasts until mid-February. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Researchers have unearthed the UK's biggest ever dinosaur footprint site. The discovery was made in a quarry in Oxfordshire. About 200 huge footprints crisscross the limestone floor. It is estimated the footprints date back 166 million years. They reveal the comings and goings of 2 different types of dinosaurs. The longest trackways are 150 meters in length.
It's a windy day here in the city and really right across southern Ontario, prompting a number of snow squall watches, warnings, and travel advisories. But if you're staying in the city and you want to go skating, then Bentway is a great place to go. But you're going to need your layers because we are holding on to these windy conditions right throughout the day. But we are still just barely holding on above seasonal. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, whether you're hitting the ice or you're staying inside. I'll have all those details coming up after the break.
Parts of southern Ontario are in for a serious dose of wintry weather. We're getting here in Toronto some flurries, but really it's just kind of the magical stuff to really enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of snow squall activity around the GTA. Much calmer in the city, though. That is where we find Jessica Smith, who's down on the ice at the Bentway. Jess, how is it down there?
I'll be honest, it is extremely windy, but it's kind of adding to the magic, right? You know, I put the hat on for a reason and it's not doing any of its job, but it is a really great day to get skating, and I feel like we need an expert here. We have David Carey. You're here with the Bentway, so talk to me about what makes this place so special, because we're right in the heart of the city. We are literally under the Gardiner Expressway, but what is it about the Bentway that you think draws people in even on a windy day like this?
As Torontonians, we spend so much time on the Gardiner, stuck in traffic, and people really just love flipping that narrative around and making the Gardiner a joyful experience.
It is nice to flip the script and kind of get out here. You guys have skate rentals available. What's new this year? Because I feel like you guys have something fun every single season.
Well, starting next week, every Monday we have free hot chocolate in the evenings. and every Thursday free skate rentals. And we're running until Family Day. We're open on all the PA days, so a great place to skate with your family.
Obviously, the weather is a factor when it comes to skating. It's been a little warm and a little rainy the past couple of days, but I can give you, the inside scoop that it's going to be pretty cold the next couple of days. Does that help for you guys?
Yeah, the maintaining the ice is always a bit of a work in progress. We've got a great refrigeration system built into the concrete, and we have our Zamboni running about every 20 to 30 minutes. So even in those warmer days over the past week, we've been able to maintain our ice, but cold weather is always better.
Well, I can give you that and then some, David. Thank you so much. We're going to flip the script and start talking about the weather because it has an impact for all the folks that are out here skating. You have those little kind of carts if you have some trouble skating, but regardless, it is going to be a nice day to be on the ice, but you have to be layered up accordingly. Weather is brought to you by Lee Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, it is a little breezy out here. I've got all my thermal layers on, but the good news is at least we're holding on to not as much snow as our friends that are sitting along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. -1 right now, feeling like -8, and everybody feeling a bit of a cool down this morning, but we are going to remain above seasonal. Heading into this afternoon on the positive side, if only barely, +1 here in the city, feeling like -5, but that wind chill a little more wicked the further kind of southwest you go towards, say, Waterloo region and through London. Now, as we head throughout the rest of our afternoon, we are going to hold on despite this wind at a fairly seasonal point or just above. This evening we'll be at -3, feeling like -9, a little cooler out through Peterborough, Bancroft, and Parry Sound when you factor in that wind chill. Now, we've been seeing these snow squalls kind of on and off throughout the morning, heavier again through areas along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. Now, we are going to see some of that snow here. We're not under any watches or warnings currently, but that could change. Just keep an eye on the sky. But the good news is, at least as we head through the next couple of days, we are going to hold on to, I guess, a better forecast when it comes to skating. We're watching, again, those streamers thanks to that little bit of a trough, that blue dotted line making its way across the Great Lakes, pushing some of that pretty white snow into our vicinity. Now, as we head throughout the rest of our afternoon, we are going to see, again, these patches of snow on and off, so keep that in mind. It is going to be a little bit dicey out there, especially, again, in those typical areas in towards those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. But the GTA, as we head in towards this evening, we get a little bit of a break. We head into our Friday, and we are going to see, again, the chance of snow not really going anywhere, but at least for the downtown core and the Greater Toronto area, you're staying relatively clear. Now, temperature-wise, things are going to shift. We're seeing a bit of a cool down as we settle into these first few days of 2025, so keep that in mind. It is going to be a little bit chilly, so you'll want to layer up if you're heading down to the Bentway or really going anywhere. Again, the next 7 days are going to be a little interesting. We're staying above seasonal today and tomorrow, and then as we head into your weekend, it cools right down. We're watching for another dose of the white stuff. As we make our way in towards our Sunday night, those overnight lows get into the double-digit territory, and that's before you factor in any kind of a wind chill. So keep that in mind. It is going to be absolutely freezing as we head in towards our Sunday nights. Now, we settle into a bit of a cold stretch in towards that first kind of full week of 2025. So keep that in mind. We get that sunshine back, but it is going to be cold. So if you want to head down to the Bentway or really any of our local rinks, you're going to want to make sure you have some layers on because the wind is a little bit wicked. Now, as we make our way in towards the next couple of days, you know what? I don't mind the cold so much, but you have to have the right kind of gear on. Hopefully this helps everybody plan. I'm going to get my skate on here. I'm going to say I'm like just above an amateur level skater. Pat's been trying to help me, our cameraman, but I'm going to send it back inside to Natalie and Michelle as we kind of get our skate on.
Ooh, yeah, Jess is, if you didn't know already, multi-talented. And
well done. Look at that.
Not amateur at all. All right, we'll catch up with her a little bit later. Well done, Pat. We'll get to a story now about 7 strangers now living together in a renovated farmhouse. And they just celebrated their first Christmas together as a chosen family.
It is all thanks to the help of a grassroots charity in Pickering that has been helping people experiencing homelessness get back on their feet. CTV's Carol Charles explains.
There you go. Got a couple more ready.
It was a first for Eileen Kelly. She celebrated the Christmas holidays in a safe space. Kelly lived on the streets for 6 years in a tent. She says this opportunity for transitional housing has changed her life.
Little simple things like having to be able to cook and, you know, like go to the store and come back home and be able to cook on the stove. Now I have bigger dreams.
Dreams shared by her 6 other housemates, strangers who have now bonded together like a family. Alan Phillips also called the streets home, living on the benches at the Pickering Library. He now manages the farmhouse property, ensuring that all tenants contribute to the upkeep, cleaning, cooking, and working on the farm.
It's a whole new world for these people here that are in here, myself included. It's a new start for them. They all worked hard to get this.
This group of people, once homeless, now brought together under one roof thanks to the dedicated advocacy resource support, otherwise known as DARS.
Our goal is use these transitional homes to take in a smaller group of people, but actually work with them and have the opportunity to see them grow.
The city of Pickering and the region have also provided financial support to help renovate this farmhouse. TACC Developments donated the 2.5 acres of property and have waived the rent for the next 10 years.
The idea of 690 Concession 3 was in fact to create a sense of family, a sense of belonging, a sense of dignity, pride, and probably something that's so important is self-respect.
Justin Millard says it's been a tough road, but he is trying to get back on track.
I don't have to worry about certain things that I used to have to worry about every day. We've grown close, yeah. It's been a healthy environment.
As they embark on a new year with their adopted family, they are grateful for a second chance.
I have a really good family here. You know, I'm actually looking forward to seeing where the venture goes. And I have their back as much as they have mine.
Moving forward, DARS hopes to replicate this farmhouse-style transitional housing project across the region. The city of Pickering will be providing an additional $50,000 in the 2025 budget to support a new roof for this farmhouse and for other initiatives to help fight homelessness in the city. Carol Charles, CTV News.
The Royal Ontario Museum is sharing its lineup of special exhibitions for 2025. Starting next Friday, the museum will host Auschwitz Not Long Ago, Not Far Away. It features objects, historical documents, and photographs never before seen here in Canada, just ahead of the 80th anniversary of the concentration camp's liberation. Starting in June, the museum will host Saints, Sinners, Lovers, and Fools, 300 years of Flemish masterworks. And in the fall, there are events including Sharks and the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibit.
The TTC is planning a number of key service adjustments to start the new year. As of Sunday, 509 Harbourfront streetcars will once again run between Exhibition Loop and Union Station, thanks to the completion of overhead work on Fleet Street. Service will also resume on the 511 Bathurst streetcar between Bathurst Station and Exhibition Loop. Meanwhile, the transit agency will shift schedules on surface routes as it does every 6 weeks in response to ridership, construction needs, and other factors. Updated schedules will be posted to the TTC website.
Coming up on CTV News at noon, we are into the new year now and the resolutions have begun. Personal health tops the to-do list for many who may be intrigued by a new weight loss drug. We'll get expert advice on whether it's safe and effective when we return.
As we mark the start of the new year, weight loss and health are top of mind for many, but for others, obesity is a year-round concern.
The development of yet another medication has doctors and patients optimistic. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan explains.
Ian Patton underwent bariatric surgery 10 years ago before the rise of Ozempic and other drugs.
It was life-saving. It was necessary at the time.
He says he's not sure he'd be here today if it weren't for that surgery, but new medications are offering more options.
We've got a much better understanding of obesity as a chronic disease, how it works, and how we can effectively manage it. So having these new tools is very exciting.
He says eating well and exercising are a good plan for general good health, but
the evidence is very clear. Eating less and moving more is not an effective treatment for any chronic disease, including obesity. Psychological intervention, bariatric surgery, and the pharmacotherapy. So those are the three pillars of obesity treatment.
We continue to see a rise of people living with obesity here.
Semaglutide drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy have been very successful, but Dr. Sean Wharton was part of a research team that recently presented its findings on a new third generation of weight loss drug called tirzepatide.
We were surprised. We thought that it would be somewhat better than what we're seeing with the second generation weight management medications, more than the 15% range, but we didn't think it would get over 20%. So we saw 22% weight loss with this new molecule, and that was a really big deal because that's an average.
Furthermore, he says the loss is from key areas.
Most of the weight loss comes from the visceral adiposity. So that's a central area in the belly. And that's the toxic fat. That fat causes inflammation and goes throughout the entire body. It leads to type 2 diabetes. It can lead to heart failure and a number of medical problems.
Tirzepatide is approved in Canada for use in patients with diabetes, but Dr. Wharton says patients dealing with obesity and no diabetes must pay out of pocket about $500 a month. In May, Wegovy was approved in Canada for weight loss, and Dr. Wharton believes tirzepatide will too because of its overall health benefits.
So fatty liver, high blood pressure, heart disease, if it has an impact on those things, then I think that the insurance companies and possibly the government will look to cover it.
There are a few contraindications for people who should not take tirzepatide, such as those with a family history of medullary thyroid cancer or idiopathic pancreatitis. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Turning to sports now, on the ice, Canada's World Junior squad will look to rebound in their winner-go-home quarterfinal matchup against Czechia tonight.
Feeds it across for Yzerman again. Cole Yzerman shoots, scores! Cole Yzerman, power play goal, 3-1, Team USA!
The Canadians will have a much tougher path to the podium after losing 4-1 to the United States on New Year's Eve. Canada's offense continued to falter and several penalties proved costly. The loss means a third-place finish in Group A and a matchup against Czechia, who ended up second in their group and eliminated Canada in the quarterfinals in last year's tournament. Puck drop for tonight's game is set for shortly after 7:30. And for more on the stakes of tonight's quarterfinal, let's bring in TSN's Mark Masters. Mark, thank you for joining us. Set the stage for us on this game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, this is as big as it gets for Canada. Remember, coming off that quarterfinal loss to Czechia last year, that disappointing fifth-place finish. Certainly, it could not happen again here on home ice in Ottawa with a capacity crowd supporting them, but it's been a grind to get to this point for the home team. That shocking upset loss to Latvia, a tighter-than-expected win against Germany, and then an undisciplined display against the Americans here on New Year's Eve. So it's on the Canadians to step up here tonight. We were just talking to some of the players. Gavin McKenna, the youngest player on the team, says he's hearing the noise outside, that people are doubting him in Canada, and he is motivated to prove those people wrong.
The stunning loss to Latvia, for example, that you mentioned, combined with losing to the United States after that, what does that do to Team Canada's morale here moving forward?
Well, you would have to think it maybe shakes their confidence a little bit. The players are stressing like they beat Czechia in the pre-tournament round. In the pre-tournament exhibition games. They also beat Sweden in the pre-tournament games, and Sweden is first place in the other group. So they're pointing to that as a reason to stay confident, and they just feel like discipline's been a big issue. If they can stay out of the penalty box, they can win. If the game is mostly at 5-on-5, they will win. They haven't allowed a goal in 5-on-5 play this entire tournament, so they had a big team meeting yesterday just about the penalty problems. They feel like they've got it figured out, but they better have it figured out because Czechia scored a lot in the preliminary round and they're feeling confident.
Yeah, exactly. And so what is your prediction for tonight's game? How does this one play out?
I mean, it's been a hard tournament to predict. I would have never thought that Latvia was going to beat Canada. But I'm going to predict that because it's been unexpected this tournament, I'm going to think Canada's going to break out tonight finally. I think they finally get the offense going. Canada's going to win this game. I'll say 4-2.
4-2. Okay, we'll remember that. Thank you, TSN's Mark Masters, joining us with the update. Thanks, Mark.
To the NHL, the Toronto Maple Leafs will be without Austin Matthews for a sixth straight game when they visit the New York Islanders tonight.
Pajot with goals against the Leafs, and it's 1-1. Here's Laurentian. Lorentz scores! Steven Lorentz gets it right back.
Toronto is playing the second game of a home-and-home set against the Islanders. Steven Lorentz, David Kampf, and John Tavares scored for the Leafs in a 3-1 win at Scotiabank Arena on Tuesday.
The Raptors were looking to avoid their 12th straight loss, hosting the Brooklyn Nets last night.
January 1st, 2025, turn the page. IQ from the logo.
Manuel quickly returned to the lineup for the Raps after being sidelined since the team's home opener back in October and had an immediate impact, scoring 21 points, helping the Raps to their first victory since December 3rd, 130-113. The team returns to action tomorrow against the Orlando Magic.
Still to come, Canada's benchmark stock index rose this morning. We'll tell you how much as we recap today's business headlines after this short break. Canadian and U.S. stocks rose on the first day of trading in 2025.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Canada's benchmark stock index rose 1% this morning, kicking off the year on a positive note. Gold stocks boosted the market as bullion topped $2,660 US an ounce after surging 27% last year. One analyst said, quote, sustained buying by central banks and geopolitical uncertainties are expected to keep gold in focus as a preferred safe haven asset. U.S. stocks edged higher after a 4-day slump at the end of 2024. However, Tesla dropped 6%. Its annual vehicle sales fell last year for the first time in more than a decade. And finally, uranium stocks jumped amid speculation that a production shutdown in Kazakhstan will tighten the market. Canadian miner Cameco says output has been halted at its joint venture with state-owned producer Kazatomprom. Cameco said it's disappointed at the unexpected suspension. That is the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
A new report on executive compensation finds Canada's 100 highest paid CEOs earned on average $13.2 million in 2023. It's the third biggest year for CEO pay after 2021 and 2022 broke records. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives also calculates that by 10:54 this morning, the average CEO on the list will have made more than $62,600, which happens to be the average annual income for a Canadian worker. The highest paid Canadian CEO in 2023 was Patrick Devigi of GFL Environmental, whose total compensation was $68.5 million.
The new year also means a new country is taking the helm of the G7. Canada has taken over this year's presidency of the G7 and will host world leaders in Alberta in June. Canada has signaled it wants to champion policies aimed at fighting climate change and managing rapidly evolving technologies. During Canada's last presidency in 2018, almost $4 billion was raised to support education for women and girls. Hollywood's award season is getting ready to kick off in earnest with the Golden Globe Awards, and we now know which stars are expected to present at the event. Organizers announced today that among the names handing out trophies at this weekend's ceremony will be Andrew Garfield, as well as fellow actors Anya Taylor-Joy and Michelle Yeoh. Just to name a few, Emilia Perez leads the pack with 10 nominations, including for Best Comedy or Musical. Other top nominees include The Brutalist, Wicked, and Conclave. Comedian Nikki Glaser hosts the Golden Globes on Sunday night.
What's your name, big fella? That's embarrassment. Welcome to headquarters, embarrassment.
And with 2024 now behind us, we are getting a sense of how much cash was spent at the North American box office last year. Deadline estimates moviegoers shelled out $8.72 billion US. That would mark a 3% drop from 2023. Hollywood insiders noted that those results surpass what might otherwise have been expected in the aftermath of last year's film industry strikes.
A mysterious object has fallen from space and landed in Kenya. The partially burnt metallic object weighs about 500 kilograms and is most likely a fragment from a rocket, likely part of a separation stage. It landed in a village. Fortunately, there were no injuries, and the next steps will include an assessment of damage to the area and finding out just which country it came from.
Still ahead on CTV News, one community organization is marking the end of Hanukkah in a very 2025 way. We'll explain after the break. Hanukkah comes to an end at sundown, and one community organization has found a very 2025 way to celebrate the holiday. A blue Tesla Cybertruck with a menorah perched on the back is touring the city, spreading the joy of the Festival of Lights. Organizers say the display combines ancient tradition with modern innovation, and it is definitely grabbing attention while receiving a positive response.
I don't think any other car would have done the same results. It's every single night we've been stopped, asked to be taking pictures with. It's literally gone viral. We've posted on our Instagram. It's, I think, at 450,000 views at this point, and it's been amazing just to see the smiles and the warmth that it brings. We've far exceeded any expectations we had of it, and it's been really exciting just to bring that light and goodness into the city.
The rabbi says a member offered up their truck for the initiative, which also saw Hanukkah goodies handed out, including traditional donuts, potato pancakes, menorah kits, and chocolate coins.